Randos show is produced live in Sunroom Studios' Base Capsule and in partnership with KLST 103.5, RadioCallisti.org. Remember to catch our Exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening.
Well, that was random.
Exceptional Radio.
Hey, good afternoon. It is Father's Day 2021. I looked at the calendar today and it said 6/20/2021. I thought, oh crap, it's 2020 again. Of course it's not. And it's Father's Day. So big ups to all the dads out there. Big ups to my own dad. Big ups to Chris's dad for being just the badass, cool dudes you are. Thank you. We've got an interesting show today. This morning I was presented with this really incredible chart, and it kind of outlines the complexity of sandwich alignment. And just for a brief description, there is a ingredient purist, an ingredient neutral, ingredient rebel, and then there on the other end of the chart is structural purist, structural neutral, and structural rebel. And this covers the gamut from your artisanal grade, beautiful, handcrafted sandwich through Subway and on to burritos, hot dogs, and Pop-Tarts. And there are some other dessert sandwiches. But this, I think this is a fairly contentious area here once we get into the ingredient rebel and even ingredient neutral territories or structural rebel territories. I am pretty flexible with this. I tend to think of bread on its most basic level as an edible napkin. And so we have like tortillas and naan and white bread and, you know, hot dog bun. It's not until you get into like actual like bread rolls does a hot dog become really an incredible experience. But, you know, we can play real loose with this, I think. And,
well, here's a hypothetical. So you have a bread bowl and you fill it with clam chowder. Is that a sandwich? Because then it's like you take that same bread bowl and you fill it with hot dogs. Is that a sandwich? I don't think so. And there's all these things about like, you know, the ingredients don't necessarily make it a sandwich because you have to put it in. You have to put the ingredients together in a certain way.
It's a format.
Yeah. Even down to when they were taking 2 pieces of chicken and putting shit between it. And it's like, well, they sandwiched it between.
It's breaded.
2. Well, and that's the thing. I've seen stuff called naked and have it be breaded chicken. Like, it's like naked because it doesn't have slices of bread, but it's still bread. I'm like, motherfucker, it's not naked then. Like, that's not what naked means.
It's wearing a morph suit. Yeah, I think if it's breaded, it has bread. And whether or not
suit.
Yeah, whether or not the lettuce is on the inside of the bread, between the bread and the main course, or if it's on the outside, it doesn't matter because I've had bread or lettuce wraps that I would also consider sandwiches. Because it's fulfilling the same function of an edible barrier that prevents your hands from getting covered in sauce. I think your bowl of clam chowder bread bowl has as much in common with pie, with like a shepherd's pie, as it does with a sandwich.
Right. And I mean, in that, like, if you take a piece of bread and dip it into soup, is that a sandwich? I don't think so.
No, that's like a sauce.
The way you're saying, like, bread is an edible napkin is a great way to describe bread. But there's a way that you have to then sandwich something between something.
Oh, I think you just hit the nail on the head.
To be a sandwich.
It has to sandwich the contents, and then you have to be able to hold it.
Yeah, and I think being able to take a bite is also another metric in that, yeah, you can't take a bite out of a pie and get all of the ingredients necessarily.
Well, once you get to a certain size, some pies are huge.
Yeah. And that's kind of where, you know, when we have these burgers that are it's like the oversized shit that you clearly can't take a bite out of. It's like, I would argue then, I think Tien came up with the accuracy. It's like, it's a pie. That's not a sandwich anymore. Like, even though it's sandwiched between two pieces of bread, you can't eat it. You can't eat both sides of the course and what is sandwiched in between in one bite. So you can't get a bite of the sandwich, and that's kind of where it's like when they do that shit for show, but not actually for human mouths. I think it goes beyond a sandwich.
That's like a meatloaf on an edible serving plate. With
right.
with all of the with the salad built into it.
You just can't get it all in one bite, and that's where it's like, yeah, you know.
I don't think is it possible to even eat a sandwich with a fork? I mean, I know you can cut up a sandwich into multiple pieces, but would a fork even be used? I don't think a fork could be used either. Huh. So scrolling through the images, and I'm not sure how much longer anyone's gonna have to wait. There's a shish kebab that has bread on both ends, and I think that this is one of those things that, you know, it almost fits into the definition of the sandwich in the sense that it's like sandwiched between bread, but I mean, this is a kebab. This thing's like 8 inches long. There's no way that anyone can fit that stack. Like, even get a bite off of that.
Yeah, unless it's like a boa constrictor, you know,
A hippopotamus.
Yeah.
You know, there's been this, you know, weird trend in portion sizes that has been going on as long as I can remember. I feel, you know, when I was little, you know, burgers seemed bigger because I was tiny, but I don't think that. You know, I think things have been getting bigger, not just in terms of like the soda size or the French fries pouch. I mean, everything seems to be getting bigger, like across the board, it seems.
Oh, they definitely have. Because then when you go to other countries where they don't use hormones in their food, the portions are way smaller. Like chicken breasts that aren't on steroids are fucking small, and then it's like a wake up call. They're like the size of what we consider probably chicken fingers.
Wow,
and the things
like game head sized.
Right, and that's where what we consider like chicken breasts are just fucking all juiced up and like
roided out mini T-Rexes.
100%, and they're on so many hormones, and until you see one that's not on hormones, you're just used to our portion size is out of control, which is also part of the reason the calories are more empty too. It's like it's not dense, like nutritious material, and I think that's kind of where, down to even the way we consume, like so many people consume 2,000 calories every day and don't actually like burn 2,000 calories worth of energy, because our cycle has been built around eating every 3 to 4 hours basically, and people haven't really thought about it in a way in that when you have people eating meat 3 times a fucking day, it's almost like a person who gets desensitized to heroin or something, and they have to increase their dosage, and it's like by the end of the day they may have had bacon and eggs for breakfast, and then they had ham and cheese for lunch, and then by dinner it's got to be a bacon double cheeseburger and a side of fries because their taste buds are so blown out that one meat won't do it. They have to have at least two meats, if not three, in the third meal. So
a McDonald's breakfast meal has 766 calories. That's the big breakfast. And then a large Big Mac meal has 1,320 calories. So that's 2,000 calories right there. I mean, that's over 2,000 calories right there. So including a third meal that day, some big meaty conglomerate of protein and carbohydrates and salt and whatever else, sauce packet, they're probably approaching closer to 3,000 calories a day than not.
Yep.
I mean, I'm imagining like a big dinner is equal or bigger than the Big Mac itself. So
it's way too easy to hit 3,000, 4,000 calories in a day just going on the cycle that Americans go on, because the crazy part about it is the way that they justify it is rationalizing all of these meals due to working constantly, but it's not as if they're doing physical labor for the most part. Yeah, if you're building a fucking house, by all means, that person needs 3,000, 4,000 calories a day. But most people aren't doing that in the American economy.
Yeah.
Most people are sitting on Facebook pretending they're updating an Excel spreadsheet while they're waiting for their boss to come around and look over their shoulder once they're back to the office. And that's the American economy. And those people are eating 3,000, 4,000 calories a day sitting at a fucking desk. And yeah, I'm down to 1 or 2 meals a day because it's way too easy to hit 2,000 calories really quick. And that's where I'm like, you don't really need more than 2,000 calories unless you're fucking Michael Phelps or some, somebody doing some Olympic shit.
UC San Diego, they did some research and they determined that 1 ounce of beef is essentially like requires 30 minutes of shower, consumes as much water as a 30-minute shower. And so a quarter pound of beef sandwich, I guess, a quarter pounder, that's like 27 showers. And then this is like terrible. There are 1,849 gallons of water used per pound of red meat for like beef. Almost 2,000 gallons of water to make a pound of cow to consume. And that's, what's that, 16 times 4, 64 burgers? It's only 64 burgers. That seems so fucked up. And then we take that further down the thought exercise, and then we realize how much land that requires and the amount of industry that surrounds that. Like, how do they get it all in and out? Processing. Any kind of industrial food product is essentially being shipped to China, where it's processed and then shipped back to America.
Yeah, this whole process is unsustainable long term. But that's where things like Impossible or Beyond Meats come in. And I think that's where it's funny to see the resistance to meat substitutes by people who claim to be Christian even. And that's where I'm a meat eater in that I love how meat tastes and the texture. But if I can get a meat substitute, by all means, I'll eat the fucking meat substitute. The way some Americans won't eat the meat substitute, even if it's you can't tell the difference. There's some pathological need for Americans to know that something has died in order for them to live. And you see it with people that don't really make their own food frequently they need to know that somebody toiled or somebody worked to serve them. And there's this whole element of, because there are castes in this country that exist, but we don't have them articulated in the same way that they do in other countries or other cultures. The ones that are in the lower castes are made to seem as if they are benefiting from us patronizing them and having them serve us, when in reality it's just the system putting them in a situation where they have to work those jobs to make other people feel better about themselves. It's like nobody wants to be somebody's servant. Nobody wants to do that. It's always something in that wanting to help people or wanting to make people feel good is not the same as wanting to be their servant. And in that, the American economy is so like, we have the service workers and the service economy. There's most of the face-to-face economy is service and what are meant to make people feel like they have a servant briefly. So yeah, you go to McDonald's, you can boss somebody around, tell them, I don't want pickles, I don't want onion. You better get it right. I'm gonna fucking have a word with your manager. You messed these fries are cold. Get your manager. I need to talk to your manager. I want to make sure you're punished because you gave me cold fries. And it makes that person feel powerful for like $8.35.
You know, that person's going out and getting the structural neutral ingredient purist sandwich because they can pay for it. But when they get home, they're lucky if they have the radical sandwich anarchy in their kitchen. Like, they're lucky if they have that Pop-Tart. I don't think the person that goes out to buy a sandwich even knows how to make a sandwich themselves.
Oh no. I mean, and that's kind of, we have a nation full of people who depend upon McDonald's to survive, but want to act like they're fucking rebels and they can take over the country and we're need to overthrow the government. Like, motherfucker, you can't make a sandwich. You can't make a sandwich, let alone overthrow the government. Fuck out of here, Mr. I can't survive without fucking toilet paper. And man, it's so funny to see how quickly Americans basically go to shit when there's the least amount of pressure. Like, oh shit, we might have gasoline shortage. I'm gonna put gasoline in a trash bag and have basically waste thousands of dollars on gasoline that I'll never be able to use because I didn't think this out right.
So
we're the follow-up stories on all those motherfuckers, right?
About 3 weeks ago, it was in the media. It wasn't very loud in the media, but it was announced that there's a chlorine shortage, and a lot of the pool chemicals are in short supply, and this is due to supply chain issues, and also there were like record number of pools built last year, and so all of the chemicals were consumed. The pool chemical industry was never prepared for that kind of surge in demand. Unlike the Saudis, they can't just turn on double their output by flipping a switch. They are relying on pretty limited resources at this point, considering the demand. So it's like there's going to be a bunch of pools out there that nobody's going to be able to get into, or they will, but they won't want to, because they'll get out with that slime.
But it's like the most American thing to have a pool and not use it anyway.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like, oh, you have your own pool, you're probably not using it.
I know one person who has a pool. They live in Texas, and they use that thing all the time. But also Texas, and it's hot as hell, and you gotta find a way to cool off. That's like one example about all the people I've ever met who had a pool in their backyard. A lot of the pools that I've seen have just been full of leaves.
Yep. Because it's maintenance, man. It's like you get the pool, and then if you don't do the maintenance yourself, then you have to pay somebody else to do it, and that shit is expensive.
Yeah.
Getting your pool shocked every year, having that shit cleaned out. If you don't want to buy the automatic pool cleaner, and you got to pay the fucking pool boy to come and get the leaves out, or the pool person, or whoever it is. It's like the whole upkeep is something that when people get money, they see short-term objects, but they don't see upkeep if they've never had money before. So they'll go out and splurge on some shit like a Lamborghini, not realizing, oh shit, his car might have cost $200,000, but the upkeep's gonna be like $500,000 more, and then the shit falls apart and they have to sell it at a loss because they didn't know what the fuck they were doing with money.
Yeah.
And you see, like I said, these people who get pools and then don't use them because they fucking built this structure, not realizing that they're gonna have to upkeep the water every fucking year. It's not just like a bath.
There is one like odd benefit to a pool, is that it consumes a substantial portion of a yard, which means that there's less yard to mow and less fuel being consumed to maintain monoculture.
There's easier ways to do that shit too. I can think of at least 1,000 better ways to like
Reduce fuel consumption and mowing lawn. Plant a garden.
Right. Rock garden, fucking mulch.
Yeah.
Fucking
Even if your garden is mostly
plant some
dirt and only
trees,
has like 1 or 2 vegetables, that's still better than that same
It's so
square of
funny
grass.
that like people are like, I'll build a fence. Like, motherfucker, plant some trees. Plant like a row of trees, and then guess what? In like a year or 2, you'll have a fence.
Yeah.
A natural fence.
Yeah, that's what I got.
Yeah,
It's great.
People just don't think long term. It's like, oh, I need this thing done now. I'm gonna have somebody build it instantly, instead of like thinking of a way that I can have this thing naturally form over time on its own.
Yeah. Well, my drive to let my yard go back to forest was driven by this report that I read about. It was the University of Kansas. They did research on how when trees move into places, the grass stops coming back over time, and so then you end up with woods. And so I've just been letting it go, because slowly over time, all of the various flora that will move in will eventually change the soil pH and change the nutrient composition of the soil, and make it more favorable for trees and less favorable for grass. And this takes anywhere from 12 to 20 years, but in 12 to 20 years, I'll have a perfect dense forest surrounding my house, and it'll be fantastic. I realize that this isn't like a situation that's like easy to facilitate, because you live in the city, or you live in town, or you live in a place where there are stricter regulation or stricter enforcement of code. You can't really have trees just going everywhere. Although I think if you have a water feature, like a natural water feature, in Bloomington at least, you can qualify to become like a wildlife habitat, and then the city gives you a little sign or a placard to put in your yard. I had a neighbor.
Like if you built a pond on your property,
Yep.
You could probably do that, which is like, it sounds crazy, but
It's as simple as having a drainage ditch in front of your house that creates a creek every time it rains. I've seen houses where they have the sign, and I mean, they have really pretty yards, don't get me wrong. I'm not complaining about that. I just find that it's amusing that the qualification is this little drainage ditch area, like right at the edge of the road, at the edge of the property. It doesn't take a lot. I mean, that's how simple it is. You can just like go buy a container of wildflower seeds for the Midwest region. If you live in the Midwest, you got to buy the right seeds. So you don't want to get like Midwestern wildflowers and try and grow them in like Arizona. That's just not going to happen. But
Right.
you get the right wildflower seeds. You just grab a handful and toss it and then wait for it to rain. And then next thing you know, you've got a field of really pretty flowers. Hopefully you're not allergic. If you're allergic, you got to modify this plan a little bit. But there's a really simple way to get out of, active care of monoculture. And it makes the world pretty. Makes it nicer to be around.
Yeah. Well, and it's like that's one of those useless carbon emissions activities in parts of the economy where it's like, do we really need people constantly just mowing lawns as something in our economy? If we got rid of lawns conceptually, there's like thousands and thousands of people that could be doing something else instead of just cutting somebody's fucking grass. That is such a waste of time and human capital and planetary resources that I'm just like constantly amazed that we still allow that shit to go on. Every time I see, because they're, in our apartment complex, they cut the grass every week. And it's like, God damn, every fucking time I'm just looking out there like, is this really necessary? Is this just something people do to make themselves feel like there's some stability? Like, oh, it's summer, time to cut the grass and get the lawnmower out and, go door to door to see if somebody needs their lawn mowed. This good old American work. And it just feels like a dead end that is just destroying the planet for a very dumb reason, especially when the grass is bred in many cases, like, so animals can't eat it without puking. And that's where a lot of the lawn grass is specifically designed so that you won't get animals grazing on it because it'll make them puke and then they won't come back and keep eating the grass. But yet people have to keep cutting it because animals won't fucking graze it. It's the dumbest fucking cycle. It's the dumbest cycle. And then it's like, it's the people who constantly are eating animals, I guess, that don't want to be reminded that there's other things that we coexist with that we shouldn't just be killing all the time, and they run over them constantly. So if you see squirrels, it's going to make it harder to just fucking drive over that squirrel when it runs into the road and you're on your way to work and you can't slow down. I got to get to work. I'm going to run over this fucking squirrel because it's my prerogative to get to work on time. And that's just that's what roadkill. These fucking possums. How dare the possum try to cross the road while I'm on my way to work? Can it see that I'm fucking a super important person that needs to be to this dumb fucking office building? I'm going to run over this possum. I'm going to run over this skunk. It's just a fucking animal. Fuck this thing. It doesn't have kids. So, man, I hate the way that the unnatural concrete jungle has made it so easy for Americans to just kill animals. Like, if the animal's crossing the road and I can't slow down. Sorry, I just had to kill that fucking animal. That's on that. It shouldn't have been crossing the road.
On that, like, I think there's a really distinct difference between using a vehicle to kill an animal because someone's in a hurry and somebody taking the time to go out and hunt a deer. At least in the Midwest,
those are two way different.
We've got like a considerable problem with deer where they destroy crop or agricultural lands and they bring fleas and ticks into areas where our pets might go out. And there's the real problem, of course, is that humans have killed their natural predator, the wolf. We sure did like those things furs, though. That stuff's real nice, but nobody gets to enjoy it anymore because they're gone. And now we've got too many deer. And deer is delicious. But,
and here's part of it. So, okay. We have too many, quote unquote, too many deer in a place that has made it culturally preferable to eat an animal that doesn't naturally occur in large fucking numbers.
Yeah.
We should be eating deer goddamn burgers, not fucking cow burgers. And this is where I'm like, we have no business trying to decide which animal is too many because we can't fucking figure out which one we should be eating. We're eating the wrong fucking animal for our habitat because we have quote unquote too many deer, but not enough fucking cow because our cow consume too much fucking water and too much fucking grass proportionate to the amount of meat they put off because our cycle's fucked up and we can't figure out why it's wrong and we keep having problems feeding people. And it's like, oh, well, maybe if we release some wolves and reduce the number of deer, then maybe the farmers will be able to grow more fucking wheat to feed the cows, and then that'll make us make it better. And it's like, God damn it, we have no fucking business doing any of this shit, but it's because people were told that the Bible gave us fucking dominion over these animals, over this land, over the natives who they called savages, that we still sit here and try to dictate how the fucking the natural process plays out. We have no fucking business trying to control the natural process. But here we are, destroying the planet, fucking on the verge of famine, on the verge of fucking a bunch of shit not being available, chicken shortage, about to have a fucking beef shortage. They haven't said it yet, but guess what? You know that shit's coming too.
Yep.
If there's a chicken shortage, we're about to have a fucking beef shortage too. They're just not, you just can't announce that shit all at once because Americans will go out and buy a bunch of beef and then it'll fucking go bad and they won't know what. It's like, man.
Well, there's a considerable wild hog and wild boar problem down in Texas, such that it's basically open season on hogs in Texas year round. And they cause something like $1.6 billion a year in agricultural losses. And this has been going on for quite a while. So it's not, I'm not saying like everyone go down and start shooting hogs in Texas, but that's well, they were brought there. They were imported. They can't win.
Bro, it's a losing battle.
Yeah.
This is what I'm saying. They shouldn't even be doing it because they can't beat some fucking feral hogs.
Yeah.
Some fucking boars. You're telling me we have any business trying to fucking dictate natural processes when we can't fucking beat some wild boars?
Like,
man, we have no business. But this is Christianity. Christianity will have you thinking, I'm going to fucking turn Mother Nature and bend her to my will. And meanwhile, you're losing a war to fucking boars. Not you, obviously.
Yeah.
Dumbass Texans.
Oh, man. Well, the Europeans brought them in because they needed food, and then they couldn't keep them under control. They got loose, and then they started breeding like crazy. I mean,
that's which thing? That's the perpetual fucking tale, bro.
Yeah, I know.
That thing that you just said happened so many times over and over and over in different areas, like, because they don't know what the fuck they're doing. They have no business trying to like manipulate nature. Just none. It's the crazy shit about it is I'm a futurist. So in that, I'm like, okay, we need to understand the genomes and figure out how to break it down, all that. That doesn't mean we then go out and like try to manipulate Mother Nature on a mass scale. Those are two completely different mandates. And the notion, like the way white man's burden and manifest destiny still to this day just bleed through in the way that we operate is why Bill Gates is the largest farmland owner in America. He has no business owning the most farmland of anybody in this country. But here we are, Mr. Microsoft, biggest farmland owner in this country. Somehow, is he from a long line of farmers? Did his family build up that farmland over fucking multiple? Not even that. Not even that. Not even some feudal lord shit. This motherfucker just became the biggest feudal lord owner because he was like a dick in tech. He was a dick in tech, so now he's a big ass feudal lord. This shit's crazy. But because we think white men can make the best decisions, we'll take a shitload of land and just let Bill Gates make a bunch of decisions about it because he's a white man. Nobody could do better. There's no way that anybody can make better decisions about all that land than Bill Gates. He's a white man. That's what America says.
I mean, obviously, Jeff Bezos is worth more, so he can make better decisions.
Oh, yeah.
And Elon can make good decisions too because he's got a lot of money.
We just give them Mars. We give them whole planets to make decisions about.
I figured it out, man. Bill Gates wants the Earth, Bezos wants the moon, and Elon wants Mars. They've already figured it out.
That's the way they're trying to make it out.
Yeah.
That's the way what you just said is the narrative that they're trying to spin so that Americans will say, yeah, I'd rather have Jeff Bezos in control of the moon in China. We don't want those commies in control of the moon. They might build missiles on the moon. And then what? At least if Jeff Bezos has it, you get your Amazon delivery within like minutes. They'll have an Amazon warehouse on the moon, just shipping stuff from the moon straight to your doorstep instantly.
They'll have a railgun system because the moon and the Earth are tidally locked, so it's always facing the Earth. It just goes around us. So when it gets into the right position, they'll just wind up the railgun and spin it up real fast, and then poof, and then a couple days later, a big parachute deploys and drops a box on top of your house.
It's okay if they use child labor too. It's like it's the moon. It's not America. American laws don't apply here. They want to breed babies to work in factories. That's okay.
Radioactive moon babies.
Laws here. It's moon rules. Moon rules are different.
Yeah, it's like Bartertown.
Yeah,
it's straight up Thunderdome. Like
anything goes.
Yeah, one package enters. Two packages enter. One package leaves.
Amazon babies using piss jugs.
Oh,
no breaks. No breaks. You will work from the day you were born to the day you die on the moon.
Well, low gravity makes it easier, right?
That's the America that that's the future conservatives want.
Oh man.
You think these commies are going to let us turn that future into reality? The commies are going to prevent that at all costs.
Man, the commies got to the moon. The commies got to the moon in like 3 years, and it's taken us, umpteen trips to get all of the data that we've been getting. And they send their first rover up there, and it has a better camera than ours do or ever have had. It's getting audio recordings too. They don't have a flying camera, but they've got a selfie stick, and they can rotate that thing around and get the same kind of gyroscopic stabilized 360-degree view of Mars. They have so many more resources. They have so much more brain hours to work on these problems, and such a huge population to draw candidates to be taikonauts. It's no wonder that they're able to do these things.
Well, and on that note, it's funny in the way that American culture makes people hyper focused and obsessed with accumulating money without ever giving them a reason or a chance to think about why or what they would even do with the money. Because then you see people chasing these nebulous goals of like, oh, I want to be a millionaire, a billionaire. For what? Like, what would what would these people even do when you ask them? And they don't even have any idea of what they do with fucking money. Because then I'm like, once you get your bills paid and you have everything taken care of, and you really if you don't restrict yourself based on some Protestant notion of avoiding joy, then money really can't get you anything more. Because then I'll give an example. Like, I got overpaid by a lot, and it was an accident. In that, like, my employer sent me my check and it was like enough of an overpayment to put me in a different tax bracket.
Dude,
And
they moved the decimal point on you without by mistake.
It was like such a complete fuck up. I instantly like messaged them. I'm like, okay, I think I just got paid way too much on accident. If I need to send this back, let me know. So that's where I'm like, for a brief second, I'm like, what do I even do with this? My bills were paid. I didn't need to buy anything, and all this this money's sitting there, and I'm just like, what the fuck do I do with this? Buy a horse? You know, like what the fuck? The fuck do I do with this money? Like, you know, buy another car? Like,
a horse.
Because then it's like, in that, it's not like I'm not already, I'm not patting myself on the back, but I already do charity. I don't need extra money to do charity stuff. Like, I don't need to be a billionaire to do charity and give away money, because guess what? That's not ever. If you have enough money to pay what you need, then it's okay to be charitable, because it's not like ruining your capacity to live. People who are living check to check have no need or no reason to be charitable. And I hate that American society pushes that shit on like people who are at just that shit really annoys me when I'm at like a checkout and they're like, do you want to donate? No, motherfucker, I just want a sandwich. Why are you asking me if I want to like save some fucking cancerous children when I came here for a goddamn sandwich? It's like, it's gaslighting, it's abusive, and it's taking advantage of people who don't have the fucking like capacity. Like, it's like, I donate to other sources or to other charities. I don't want people deciding what charity for me to donate to, and then gaslighting me into doing that, first off. And second off, people who are coming into these spots really have no business giving to charity, because most of them would be the ones that the charities were fucking supporting. So these businesses and big corporations taking advantage of people's emotions,
they're
to
taking
then
advantage
write
of
that shit off.
They're taking
It's
advantage
the
of people who don't know how to
worst.
make sandwiches.
Yeah. Yep.
That's what it is.
Full circle.
Straight up.
People who don't know how to make sandwiches, these corporations are taking advantage of them in a moment of vulnerable. They're hungry. Their blood sugar's low. And they're like in this moment, it's crazy if you don't get your blood sugar up quick enough. Even making a decision about what to eat becomes difficult. I'm in that state, and you're asking me, do you want to donate to St. Jude's? Motherfucker, I'm about to throw this goddamn cash register if you don't give me a fucking sandwich, because my blood sugar, and you're bothering me about fucking children? And it's like, that's the problem, in that the children having cancer and needing support is its own problem. My sandwich should not have been brought into this fucking problem. And when people are put into that, it like puts them at odds with the cause that is being thrust into their face. And it puts them at odds with the person who's like forced to ask them, do you want to donate? Like, they don't want to fucking do that shit either. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to push. Do you want to add an extra drink? Do you want to upsize that? And I've worked in retail or food service. You're forced to do that shit. If you don't ask these people these questions, you will get fired. That shit is bullshit, man. The upselling and the pushing, the suggestive selling, that shit is so manipulative, and it takes advantage of people who are in a vulnerable spot. If we're just talking about blood sugar, if I'm going to an establishment, let's assume my blood sugar is too low for me to even think about what I want to eat, and I've wandered in there because I need to eat, and I just need to fucking eat. Asking me if I want to donate to some cause, that's fucking abuse, man. We get abused at every fucking turn. We get abused in our homes when we're trying to watch something. Oh, advertisement, bombarding. I didn't want this shit. So you mean to tell me somebody paid to steal my attention when I was trying to watch this one thing? Somebody paid to interject So then they have my attention. They tricked me, and now my attention is being stolen by this fucking mind violating ad. We have our minds constantly violated by shit we did not sign up for, and we're made to think that shit is normal. This is mind rape. There is no other way to fucking describe it. And I'm sorry if people are like triggered by that word. I apologize. But the problem is there is no other way to describe it. When you are having things bombarded into your consciousness, into your psyche, flashing images that could fucking make somebody have a seizure that you did not sign up for, that shit is violating. It's like the worst kind of violation, and we have it so normalized now that I'm like concerned that people don't realize how much their psyche has been bombarded constantly in a way that they're just used to it. I don't think a lot of people know about ad blockers.
Well, it's always been amazing. It's always amazed me how the industry itself has always maintained that, oh yeah, these ads, these sponsored ads, or this kind of marketing helps keep the costs down. It helps subsidize the cost of all this stuff. When our government gives the telecom providers, the internet service providers, grants to develop new infrastructure and to replace or maintain existing infrastructure that needs it. Like it's part of the deal. And so it's not like they have to make everyone's internet connection be a certain speed. They do it because they want to extract more wealth from people, or they just want to extract money from people, not even wealth. But at the same time, they are subsidizing the costs with advertising. They're subsidizing the cost of an already existing infrastructure with advertising. And it's just electricity at that point. And I can't imagine that. I don't know how much electricity does that whole kind of system use. I mean, all of our really industrial grade networking hardware itself. This stuff is like designed to run nonstop, and these things running in facilities with backup generators and backup batteries and really intense cooling solutions, and maybe the entire system itself is fundamentally flawed, and we just have bought into a computer network that is long overdue for to be re-examined, and to maybe we can get maybe we have a better way to communicate. It's not the internet. At least not the sponsored internet.
Well, and you kind of hit the nail on the head in that there was subsidy to private industry to build the internet, and we still have to pay to get on something that we've technically already paid once for, at least once, if not multiple times, as taxpayers. Like our tax money subsidized the research, development, and deployment of these things, only for private industry to come in and charge us to access things that we paid to help them build.
Yeah.
It's again, it's because people are gaslit into thinking, for whatever reason, having ownership in that process is somehow this communist evil thing. We need to have 3 people own that process. Maybe I'll get to be one of those 3 people one day and exploit the fuck out of everybody else. Otherwise, why should everybody benefit? If there's a discovery, only one man should benefit, because technically he probably paid for it somewhere. Even if it was a team of people, that one man was paying all of their checks. So
even if all the money came from like multiple sources, but was funneled through one person who decided to shoulder the responsibility of being the face of that project.
Even if he exploited 1,000 people to make all that money, he's the one that wrote the check. He owns the intellectual property by law. So that's his. They signed the contract. They knew that if they worked on those computers, anything they created would be under his ownership. They knew that. That's the deal they made. They had, I don't care if they had to pay bills, had to take care of kids. That's their fault. Existence, it costs money.
God.
So be it. There's no way around it. Well, yes, our government could potentially take care of housing, and yes, our government could provide a universal basic income.
And
that's
healthcare.
true. I guess our government could own industry and own agriculture and have things that compete with private industry in which the government ownership would contribute and have affectation, which would lead to progression, but not own everything. I mean, I guess that's an alternative, but that's a communist, so we can't do that. We cannot have the government create an alternative. The government just needs to give money to private industry and have private industry develop it.
Man, the hippie commune really did spin a number on communism.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that
hippie communes never produced anything of value.
Yeah.
If one hippie commune had ever produced anything of value, then their argument would have been basically shot, and we would have all the ammunition in our belt just loaded. Oh, what about the commune that did this X, Y, and Z? And it's like, nope.
I think the closest thing we've got is like Grateful Dead. And that's been so commercialized.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
And that's
the furthest thing from communism. It's like the Grateful Dead are the most capitalist hippie thing ever.
Like they formed a commune so they could qualify for nonprofit status long enough that they could incorporate once they were big enough to make all the money.
Yeah. Grateful Dead basically like exploits people who do drugs to make them think that they're listening to music, and just I guess obviously they're not in the same capacity as when Jerry was alive or whatever, but it's like yeah. I mean, not to say, okay, people can have their music preferences, but you talk to Grateful Dead like heads, and a lot of them don't actually like the music. And that's kind of why it's like they're there for drugs and the environment and like the culture. And they're like, oh, the music's okay. And they don't even really like that. Like a lot of them don't really like it all that much.
Yeah.
Which is where it's like, it's different than Fish. Fish heads love Fish's music, even though they're also there a lot of times for the drugs. And it's like a lot of similar, it would look the same, except that Fish people really, really seem to be into the music, where a lot of the Deadheads are just like, oh, okay, the music's all right.
You know, I think we could probably describe a lot of music cultures like that. There are always the people who are really into the music, and then there are always the people that are really into the culture that surrounds it, and then there are the people that just show up because they like those drugs. And that's where they get that type of drug that they're after. Because they all have their own, they all have their own access at some point, and all of these music cultures are associated with some kind of consumption, alcohol, marijuana. Some get into like using coke or designer drugs. Psychedelics are pretty heavy in a lot of music cultures, actually. And then there are the really sober ones, like you go to a chamber and you listen to academic performances of conservatory music. That's like a really sober place until they get out of the conservatory, and then you find that there are people who are consuming amphetamines so they can stay up late enough to study the material and learn it so they can maintain their seat in the orchestra. I think that's like, I don't actually care if athletes or musicians want to use drugs. Like, there should just be like a little asterisk next to their name in the history book that said, oh yeah, this person was enhanced with something. And then we'll be able to compare, like, some baseball player in 20, 30 years who hits more home runs than whoever Mark McGuire, Barry Bonds, or whoever, Ken Griffey Jr., but he's not on a bunch of steroids.
I mean, they already do this with weightlifting or bodybuilding, and that you have natural leagues and then non-natural leagues. So I don't think there's
Exactly. The model's already been established. They just have to apply it
to other sports.
Yeah, that's fine. If there's some runner out there who's all juiced up and can run like crazy, cool. I want to see it. But it'd be nice to know that, like, we're not comparing him to normal, unaltered or unenhanced athletes.
I mean, but in that, it's like, what is an unenhanced athlete then, if not somebody who's just not willing to go as far as possible? in 2021, we got to be realistic.
Sure.
In that.
I mean, that's like an
the whole
amateur
reason
league.
I'm not right. Exactly.
Maybe
and
they don't have access to the advanced training or the advanced nutrition systems or the advanced the technology, and so they can't take advantage of those kinds of systems. But there's nothing wrong with the people who do. Like I said, man, I want to see that person run really fast. I want to see that person hit the ball extra far.
To the contrary, I think the notion that somehow the natural athlete is the more human one is illogical, in that the only reason we have survived is because of our power over nature to make it into technology that fits our needs.
Yeah.
So the notion that, like, oh, if you're running track, well, are you doing it barefoot? Oh, you're running in cleats? Well, you're fucking using enhancement. So the notion of, like, where we draw the line of enhancement is completely arbitrary. And most of the time it's bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. And this is where I'm saying, like, well, unless people, because guess what? The Greeks would compete naked. So unless we're going like that, then we need to shut the fuck up about enhancements and just say, oh, right, exactly. Like, like unless we're saying we're gonna start competing completely naked, I'm cool with that. Because guess what? Sports aren't sexual. So if you have two people competing naked and you can't see without being sexual, that's on you. Which is where it's like, go watch Turkish oil wrestling. If you can't see that without being sexual, that's on you. So I have no problem with people, like, fucking competing naked. Guess what? Won't bother me one bit.
I think football would actually be a lot more interesting.
Yeah,
I think
for sure.
football it would become a much faster paced game.
Yep.
There would still be big people, but you'd see people really running because they wouldn't want to get tackled. They wouldn't want to get hurt.
Yep.
And
it'd be a different sport.
Yeah.
It would be a way more interesting sport.
It'd be so much more fast paced.
Way more interesting.
And you'd have the linemen would basically be like sumos. They'd be pushing each other with their hands. But
and the funny thing is, it's like, man, it's like, I have a penis. I don't care if like somebody's got a dick, whatever. I don't care. You know,
good for
there's
them.
this whole, you know, like, people are afraid of looking at other things, like, oh, I'm going to turn gay if I see a dick. Like, okay, that's a weird way to see things. That's a really weird outlook, I guess. But again, that's where I'm like, guess what? They used to compete naked. So if we're talking about enhancements, if you're not competing naked, don't arbitrarily draw the line at your fucking cleats. Because the cleats are enhancements too.
Oh yeah, I was just thinking about that. Cleats are definitely an enhancement. A glove is an enhancement. A helmet is an enhancement. Even a sweatband is an enhancement.
Of course, yep. Like wicking clothing is an enhancement.
Yeah.
Fuck, all of this shit is and that's what I'm saying. Like, you know, there is a very thin line between imperialist gatekeeping and logical separation.
Yeah.
And most of the time it's imperialist gatekeeping, which is why, again, it's like, you know, for whatever reason, they've decided that like steroids and EPO or whatever, that's the line they've drawn. But everything else is cool. Like, here's a great example. Like, say neither one of us uses steroids, but I've got 35 fucking coaches. I've got access to
world-class gym.
World-class scientists that can measure the speed of all my movements, measure my body fat. I have nutritionists. I have chefs cooking my food. All I think about is training and sleep and fun. and this is the compared to the person who's coming up has no support.
Yeah.
We're equal? No, fuck, we're not equal. So let's not pretend that just because neither one of us is using steroids that those two people are somehow equal. Fuck no, it's not equal. But those people are allowed to compete in the same league.
Yeah.
All the time in every fucking league, those two people constantly are competing against each other.
Well, I think it's really easy for people to confuse the gym for the arena. Like people might train in the same gym, but they're not always playing the same game. Even if they are playing baseball, one might be in a different league. One might be in a completely, you sign up when you get there kind of situation. I don't think anyone's trying to. Well, maybe they are trying to compare that. I don't know. I want to see Beefcake roided out baseball dude hit that ball really hard and really far. I don't care how roided out they are if they get a bajillion home runs. That's interesting to me. I don't want them to die, obviously, and there's always a risk of people getting like really serious health complications from using steroids. But that's what they want to do, and it's not hurting anyone. Then is that the problem, or is it that someone's made uncomfortable because they can't compete at that level without doing something they don't want to do? I don't know. I don't know enough about that stuff to really sort it out in my mind. I don't have a problem with it, I guess.
Here's my thing. I've never, ever, ever in my life used performance enhancing drugs, but I enjoy competing against and beating people who do. I enjoy that shit.
Yeah.
Because guess what? That's the type of shit that gives them nightmares. That's the type of shit that drives them to do steroids in the first place. If I can make somebody have a nightmare because they can't compete with me so much that they had to take a performance enhancing drug and they still lost, they're going to go home and fucking have nightmares about that shit. I love that shit. I eat that shit up, man. And that's where I'm like, yeah, let them take steroids because I'm going to beat them anyway. So this is where I'm like, it's not even about like, oh, the steroid. Because guess what? Go look at all of the people in the UFC who've popped. Very few of them became champions. Very few of the UFC champions popped while they were champions. And then you look at the ones who popped, and almost all of them went up against the dudes who became champions and lost. So it's funny to like think about the way that you have to perceive yourself to be in competition. And there is this element of, if you have to take performance enhancing drugs, part of you doesn't believe in yourself. Part of you has to not believe in yourself to take that performance enhancing drug. So guess what? That person often doesn't actually become the champion because they don't actually believe in themselves in this little corner that drove them to take the fucking PED in the first place. So this is why, guess what? Let them compete against us. Let them compete against us because I'll whoop their ass in any sport. It don't matter. We could be fucking playing ping pong. And I'm going to beat the PED person because I know deep down inside, I don't need a drug to beat them. And that's going to be the difference between the fucking champion and the person that takes fucking roids and gets to the top and looks all mean, has their veins fucking popping out. But guess what? There's always some person that comes along. What's their name? Fallon Fox. Everybody was like, Fallon Fox is on TRT because Fallon Fox is transgender. Guess what? I think it's Ashley Evans came along and beat Fallon Fox's ass because Ashley Evans believed in herself and didn't need TRT to fucking win. So this whole thing is like, and not to say, okay, it's a nuanced example. It's not a bad example, but Fallon Fox was taking actually estrogen replacement, so it wouldn't even be TRT in this case. So that's kind of where like the people who were making that argument were getting it even wrong. So that's where there's all these things about like the way that people make logical frameworks about competition don't actually hold up when you look at the psychological motivations for taking PEDs in the first place.
Yeah, this is an interesting case because she like broke someone's skull, and then that was 7 years ago, and then when was her last fight? Not too long ago.
I mean, but that happens all the time.
Yeah.
The quote unquote like injury that they're citing, that happens so frequently in mixed martial arts. And it's like it almost has nothing to do with Fallon Fox being trans so much as
No, that's like this. That's the weird part. That's the first thing that I see is Fallon Fox breaks someone's skull.
Because that happened when she broke the chick's skull. People were like, she shouldn't be fighting. She shouldn't be fighting. She's trans. She has no business fighting cis women. And then she comes and fucking loses. So, yeah, it's like, man, people would make the whole reason that argument is there is because there's an assumption among those people that a man will automatically be better at something than a woman. And that shit obviously doesn't hold up. Those are the same people that think they could score a point on Serena Williams. Those are the same. It's this that Venn diagram is a fucking circle. I promise you. I promise you it's the same people.
Venn diagrams that are circles.
I promise you it's the same demographic. If you don't think trans people should participate in sports, you probably think you could score on Serena Williams too.
I'm saying that Venn diagrams that are also circles needs to be a meme or a website.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Man.
I don't think anybody in their right mind, even like unless they're like a world class, and I mean absolute world class tennis player, like I don't think anyone in their right mind thinks they can score on Serena Williams. Maybe your sister thinks she can, but probably not. Seriously,
There's
people
less
think
than
they can.
1,000. I was gonna say there's probably less than 1,000 people on the face of the planet that could score a point on Serena Williams.
Yeah, man.
And most of them go to Wimbledon. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like most of them are already there trying to score points on her, and in many cases not. So yeah, most of them are already at Wimbledon.
Let's see how many people compete at Wimbledon.
In it, I think there's like a field of 100 or something each year, or maybe
128 people.
Yeah,
So
100, a little over 100.
realistically, at best, there's 127 people that might be able to score on Serena Williams.
Well, and I count the people who are not, they didn't make it into the cut. There's like usually about another 150, 200 people that did not make the cut that are on the cusp. And those people could very easily, any of those people could very easily have made the cut. It's just the luck of the draw at that
There are
level.
1,814 professional tennis players currently.
Yeah, there's a ton.
So, and there are
I mean, I guess like not a ton, thousands.
there are
not a ton,
1,100 pro players ranked on the World WTA. So there are 1,105 people who could potentially score on Serena Williams.
and it's usually like the people who make Wimbledon, like it's like, oh, there's the top 100, but everybody, there's like 200 people who are all on the cusp of making it at any given year, and they could just as easily. But then like once you get to like the lower 500, those aren't, it's not the same. So again, it's like, you know, everybody who's professional couldn't score a point on Serena.
So in 2017, the International Tennis Federation was keeping track of 14,000 professional tennis players, and then that number dropped to 1,500 over the next year.
Yeah, I think there was a point where tennis got really popular.
Yeah.
So they were doing way more events, and then it peaked in tennis, and tennis has passed its peak for sure.
14,000 people were playing tennis professionally. That's just
way too many.
there aren't enough television channels to put up enough matches to make tennis make sense.
For a 2-on-2 or for a 1-on-1 or a 2-on-2 sport, that's way too many people in the professional. Like there's probably 1,000 people in the UFC, maybe. I don't know, maybe a little more than that.
There are only 1,026 people who play in Major League Baseball right now, as of the 2020 season.
Oh damn! There's not even 1,000 people in the UFC right now. There's 724 active fighters. So yeah, one-on-one sports. When you get past 1,000 people, that's like just way too many on the professional level.
There are only 529 registered players in the NBA, spread across 30 teams.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because again, we're talking about the elite of the elite of the elite.
There are 16.
There shouldn't be that many.
Just shy of 1,700 people in the NFL, and there are 610 people who play professional hockey.
Jesus Christ! There's fewer professional hockey players than doctors, which I guess is not a bad thing. But you would think it would be easier to become a doctor, or easier to become a hockey player than to become a doctor on the professional level, but it's not at all, apparently.
No.
Or football or basketball player.
Yeah, it's actually a really competitive industry that
way more competitive than it seems, right?
Fuck. I mean, it's already obviously as competitive as can be, but if there are only that how many college football.
I mean, but you would think with the odds being that low, way more Americans would try to be like, oh, I'm going to try to get my kid to be a doctor or a lawyer.
So there are 36,000 NCAA baseball participants with approximately 8,000 who are eligible for draft. And within men's basketball, there are 18,800 NCAA participants and only 4,000 eligible for draft. 16,500 women basketball, only 3,600 who are eligible for draft. In football, 73,700 who are participating in college football, and out of that, 16,380 are eligible for draft. And out of that 16,380, they're not getting that many.
It's not as bad now that they can make money.
Yeah.
But it's not good that they're doing this to make money.
Yeah.
So there's a catch-22 there in that, that's a weird trajectory for society to be trying to.
Only 1% of NCAA men's basketball players and 2% of NCAA football players are drafted by the NFL and NBA or NFL respectively.
That's really crazy, because I figured it was low. But hearing those numbers, that's like
they're taking the top percentile.
Well, and so much money is going into these. So much money and energy is going into these programs. In that, the football coaches and the basketball coaches get paid way more than the teachers. But then knowing how few of them will actually make it to that level is. It's not surprising that we're this bad at planning, but Americans putting this much effort and time into sports and then not even having that many positions for people to fill and not realizing it. I think that's the problem. Is I don't think Americans realize how few of these spots there actually are. It's like, oh, the NFL, NBA, these are gigantic organizations, but there's not a whole lot of actual players. There's very few players, apparently. And in some cases, under 1,000. So when we're talking about, obviously they have turnover where, it's not the same 1,000 people for like 30 years. But, I guess they have the minors and the the minor leagues.
The average
basketball-
NFL
for
career
other-
is 2.5 years. 2.5 years is that's like nothing.
Yeah.
That's the average it takes people to get an associate's degree.
Jesus Christ.
Let's see what the average The average salary is $860,000, but a starting 1-year rookie has a minimum income of $435,000. So they're looking at maybe making $1 million for those 2 years and being beat up and potentially suffering some traumatic brain injury for $1 million for the rest of their life.
And you know they're going to drop most of that on a house.
Yep.
So then it's gone.
Yep.
Because they're poor decision makers because they weren't taught like long-term planning in most cases. So yeah, this is the cycle, man.
Should have given that money to their mama.
Probably, right? Yeah. Straight up.
I mean, that's a real rough industry. I can't imagine that anyone. I mean, I know that like was it Jerry Maguire? They kind of played with the football player towards the twilight of their short career, moving into like vehicle dealership promotion or selling cars. I mean, that's like, I guess Larry Bird had a bunch of car dealerships all over Indiana.
Oh yeah.
But after his illustrious career as a champion basketball player, like 2.5 years and $1 million, that just seems like that's like the kind of compensation that seems just flawed. It's a lot of money, I get it, but that's a physical toll that's just, I can't even imagine it. And we know that there are problems because there have been numerous studies that forced the NFL to redesign helmets and redesign padding and work towards making it safer somehow for several 100-pound men to collide head first. I don't know. I've only seen one professional football game, and that was, I mean, it was incredible. I'm not going to lie. It was one of the most exhilarating sports viewing experiences I've ever had. But it was also like,
you gotta think like our sports stadiums are bigger than the Coliseum, bro.
Yeah. Yeah, no.
You know?
The playing field at a football field, a professional football field, is like bigger than the Coliseum.
Yeah, for sure. And this is kind of where the scale of where we're at now in society is so far beyond what we romanticize as being like, oh, Roman Coliseum, peak of society. Like, motherfucker, the Colts Lucas Oil Stadium is like 3 times as big or some shit. And it's not to say, obviously I don't think the Coliseum didn't completely hold up. I was gonna say I don't think the Lucas Oil will last in like 500 years, but neither did the Coliseum really. Half the facade is gone, so yeah, I don't know, man. I don't see a lot of the stuff we built today in the last 100 years lasting 500 years for one reason or another.
Well, so much of everything's made out of metal, and metal rusts.
Yeah, that alone.
My understanding is that the composition of concrete that was used throughout the Mediterranean during the classic Roman period, they were using like really complex combinations. They put like hemp, a certain type of hemp fiber into the concrete, and as the lime in the concrete did its magic to the hemp, it turned it into like carbon fiber, essentially like micro or carbon fiber nanotube type structures. So this would permeate through the concrete and hold it together. It's part of the reason that stuff has lasted so long is that they were using a chemical mixture that's, lost through time. Also, I don't think they can grow that hemp anymore. But that's the kind of stuff. It's like we see these giant old structures that have been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years, and people marvel at it. It's just like they were using different materials. If we were building everything, actually, no. I saw a picture of the some stairs in the Great Wall of China, and they all had these distinct, like, worn out sections where people had stepped over the years. Everyone stepped in the same spot, so the stairs had this offset dip at each step, and it was kind of cool. But that thing's also been around for a long time.
Okay, this is a hard transition, but it definitely needs to be made at some point. Bacon bits work in pancake mix, everyone. Bacon bits work in pancake mix. This dawned on me last night. I was like, and I want to say this to people. If you ever get a food craving or a food itch, make sure you take care of that shit, because it's like some shit where people will have a craving and not do it, and it's like that's some self-hating shit that Protestant church wants you to act like. They want you to ignore cravings and not give into that stuff.
I like to put crushed pieces of bacon into scrambled eggs.
Oh yeah, I did that too. I did that on the side,
but I never would have thought to use a pancake.
But that's what I'm getting at. It was like,
do you
after
put like
midnight,
brown sugar in it too?
No. Because here's the thing. So it was like, it dawned on me that I'd never seen bacon bits in pancakes before. And I'm like, I wonder if it like fucks it up or something. And I was like really, really craving pancakes. So I'm like, man, I could either buy some pancakes or I could just try to make these pancakes with bacon bits and see how that shit turns out. And god damn it, it was fucking amazing. And it's like, not only did it work perfectly, but it like makes the batter go farther. So I ended up just freezing the leftovers. Like, I could only eat 2 pancakes. Like, it's almost like when you put salt, you put salt in pancakes, but I feel like the salt in the bacon.
Oh, you're talking about replacing the flour with bacon bits.
No. I'm just saying adding bacon bits to the pancake mix once it's already I made the mix.
Okay.
And added bacon bits to it before I cooked them, and it they don't pour the same because the consistency is slightly different.
Yeah.
But they cook up almost fluffier. It's like something about adding the bacon bits to them gave them more integrity in the structure. So these pancakes were like, I want to say the formula, the recipe I usually use is like they cook up to be like a centimeter thick. They were like 1.5 centimeters thick this time. And I've used this same recipe for a while, and it's pretty standard. Like, they're always thick, but it's like something about the bacon made them slightly thicker. And that's where I'm like, yes, I feel like I invented some shit. Even, obviously, bacon goes well with almost everything. So people have added bacon to shit forever, but I've never seen bacon pancakes. And not to say somebody hasn't done them somewhere, but I've never seen them. It's
bacon and eggs and pancakes. You've combined them into one thing. You're one step away from space food.
It's like that's
the kind of thing that you could store in a small container and then create a lot of food on demand, but it covers protein and carbohydrates and sugars and fortify it with metals.
Yeah.
But that's that's some space food right there, man.
Yeah, the way you're talking, the egg changes the thickness that it cooks up, so more egg actually doesn't make it thicker. It seems to, I think it makes it thinner.
Well, I think with egg it depends on how you whip it. If you whip it, or if you fold it, or if you blend it, or if you just beat it to the point that the protein chains start to break down on their own, which is essentially cooking it.
And if you include the white.
Yeah.
And not the yolk.
And all of these things will contribute to, if you beat it till the protein chains start breaking down, it's going to be just runny as can be anyways. It'll never fluff up. But I always try to fold the yolk into itself. And I guess in my mind, I think of it like a taffy. How when you fold taffy over and then you pull it again, it doubles the layers every time. And so you're just stretching the egg out and folding it over itself over and over again until it looks like scrambled eggs. And then when it cooks, it turns into this weird lace type consistency. I cook scrambled eggs at really low temperatures, though. Well, what I would consider low temperatures.
I do too. I cook everything at low temperature most of the time.
Yeah.
unless it's like needing to sear or something. But it's really hard to burn stuff if it's at a low temperature.
Yeah. The wok is the only place that I really like high temperature, but that's a style of cooking. So, but yeah, pancakes with bacon. I like it. I think that
and
it's
like you said, I did eggs with bacon on the side.
So-
I was like in a bacon mood.
so you
but
take
also in a
one of these
pancake mood.
bacon bit pancakes and you cook up an egg and you put it on top, and then you cook up a sausage patty and you put it on top, and then you add 2 slices of bacon and then a piece of of ham, and then you put another pancake on top. It's a
And
sandwich.
you have a heart attack.
Well, yeah, the heart attack. That's like this Heartstopper Supreme XL Grande Pollo Rancho or something like that. But is that a sandwich or is that breakfast still?
Yeah.
Because you're not going to pick that thing with your hands.
It took me about an hour to eat 2 pancakes. I straight up had to pause halfway through
There's
and take a breather. Because I think I made I made 8 pancakes. And at first I had a stack of 3 and I looked at it and I'm like, this feels like a lot. I'll eat 2, and if I need to, I'll do a third, because I had made 3 eggs on the side. And then halfway through, I'm like, wow, this was like way more food than I anticipated. Because the whole thing is, when I'm like looking at IHOP's menu and their short stack of pancakes is like $6 and then a side of eggs. And then I'm like, okay, I can make this stuff. And then when you make it, it's like the cost of the ingredients. You're like, oh, fuck, this is like nothing. So I'll make like 8 pancakes and like 3 eggs. So your brain goes all these dumbass places because we've been conditioned to think of things in terms of money. And then it's like, oh, this isn't going to cost anything. I'll make like 8 pancakes.
Yeah, there was a time when I got into the habit of cooking the entire pound of bacon before I discovered those like thick, several pound container variations of bacon. And so I'd always end up with like a bunch of bacon just sitting around, and I would just eat it all day long. That's not healthy.
Yeah,
that's like
no.
actually that's the only time in my life where I've ever been aware of high blood pressure, what it actually felt like. Except I tend to have good normal low end of the normal blood pressure range. But
I realize the trick is you have to freeze stuff, because
yeah,
there is a thing of like, if you cook something, sometimes you have to, because it takes so much time, you don't want to cook one serving. So like, yeah, if you're cooking bacon, just like 3 slices of bacon, that's like a waste of time. So yeah, it makes more sense to cook a pound, but the easiest way to then not eat it is to freeze it. So then, yeah, but then the problem is you have to freeze it so then it's not all stuck together, so that you can't.
Yeah, and then you end
pull
up
out everything to unthaw it.
Yeah, then you end up breaking it when you pull it out.
Yeah,
And then when you
exactly.
reheat it, it cooks it a little bit more than it was before. It's
This is like separating. So I took those pancakes and separated them into different little bags. So they're individual servings now. So if I want some pancakes, I just pull out a bag, pop that shit in the oven, and reheat it, and the other ones are untouched.
that's the food saver model.
Yep.
Yep. I am all about that. My dilemma is that I'll put like a soup into a container that I can't see inside of, and then I foolishly think, oh, I'll remember what this is, and then it ends up in the freezer, and then like a few months later, it's like, what the fuck is this?
Out of sight, out of mind is real, man.
Oh,
and I
man.
realize that, which is where I have avoided using closed containers, because it's like, it'll be something you really love, but because you don't see it, it's like that shit isn't even there, and then it goes bad.
So speaking of out of sight, out of mind, I have something that is worth its weight in gold. I have a bag of frozen chicken wings. Behold, I have chicken wings.
That is like, yeah, in a chicken shortage,
Yeah.
ears perked up everywhere.
Yeah.
I got some blue cheese in my fucking fridge.
I got some celery. We can make this happen.
Hot sauce.
Oh man. So I think I still have pretty high hopes for summer. We're like, what are we, a day away from summer beginning or something like that? It's been fairly habitable outside. There have been a few hot days and a few humid days, a few really chilly nights, but overall I haven't felt like my sinuses are just functioning like normal. And maybe it's that whole year of wearing a mask when being out in public.
I mean, I still wear my mask, so I'm not getting, nearly as bombarded by the
pollen
allergies. Yeah, exactly. And then it's crazy because then when I get home and take off my mask, I can smell the pollen on the mask, so it's not as if the pollen's not there.
Oh yeah, well, my mask is my fancy mask is made of silicone, and so it just, anything that's in the atmosphere that doesn't get trapped by the filter itself, just that lands on it, that comes with it. And it's like it's kind of disturbing how much crap is in the air that we just can't really see until it starts accumulating or accreting on another surface.
Yeah, and shout out to our lungs for processing that shit most of the time, because
yeah, seriously,
I can only imagine how, like, whenever I clean my computer fans, it amazes me where I'm like, oh God, what do my lungs look like? Well, but my lungs feel fine, so I know they're processing shit where, it's obviously not looking like my computer fan.
And yeah, I've
cigarette smokers though, I bet this shit looks like a computer fan.
Man, I remember when I worked at a computer shop for a summer, I remember seeing some computers that would come in and they would have the weirdest looking hairy brown monster living on every fan. Like, and it also in weird nooks and crannies, and it was the kind of thing that, they have a little special attachment to the vacuum cleaner, so you can get a straw into these back areas to pull these things out. And sometimes they would just pull this plug and stop the vacuum cleaner. You'd have to pull the thing out, and this big old hairball thing. And I just would always wonder, like, what kind of environments do these computers live in? And I realized that not everyone can have a clean room. It's like almost impossible, actually. But it's also, what kind of environments are people actually? I remember when I worked in an office, and every so often I would open up the computer and dust it out, and there would be these big old hairballs in it. So, and I understand it. I have cats and I have a dog. I understand hair accumulating on surfaces, but not in an office where there isn't really a cat or a dog wandering around.
Yeah, there's a lot of dander from that.
Oh yeah. I mean, all dust is skin and hair. Almost all dust, at least. At least the dust inside the house.
Yeah. But yeah, I was like leaving my computer cases open for the heat factor. But after cleaning them, I'm like, man, it's just too much dust and shit builds up too quickly. So I had to close them up, and
Yeah.
that's where I'm looking at it. Like, again, what are people's lungs looking like when they're smoking cigarettes, man? Whew.
I've pretty much transitioned to all-in-ones or laptop-sized computers, like tiny, small computers for my normal everyday computing. And I am actually kind of concerned now that you mentioned it. Like, I wonder what they're going to look like when I open them up and clean them out. Because I haven't.
Yeah, because even laptops, obviously, they have very low profiles in which shit can build up. But yeah, there's still holes and stuff definitely gets in there.
They still, I mean, I have special pick tools so I can reach around things, but as all of our computers get smaller, they're still going to have to siphon a lot of air through their heat sinks. They have to. We haven't figured out how to make these things run cold yet. And so at a point when big desktops are really the territory of workstations, professional grade computers, servers, and gamers. And the majority of the market of mainstream computing is performed on all-in-ones or laptops or microcomputers. Now there is less like end user serviceability. And I know that some of these things are really easy to open, but I also know people don't open their computers because I've seen inside computers, and I can tell that, you can tell when a computer has had like been on its entire life because there's that one layer of hair and dust that's like really a lot darker and a lot harder than the other hair and dust.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe we're on the verge of like a solid state computer breakthrough. I mean, phones have really come a long way in the last decade, and they're incredibly powerful. Some of them you can just connect to a remote
That's
monitor
true.
and keyboard and mouse, and then they become full blown computers practically.
That's very true.
For
Yeah.
years, I thought eventually we would have a phone that would contain all of our information and would also be able to just, walk up to your desk, set it on the wireless communication pad, and then your computer would be available to a monitor, keyboard, and mouse. And that would be the model for like a cyber cafe. You would just have your phone in proximity, sign into the thing, establish a connection, and everything is hosted from the mobile device. And then we're no longer trapped inside, the fondle slab. Now we can use a real keyboard and mouse and access the internet on a screen that's big enough to actually read and not sit there like craning the neck and pinching the eyes. And I'm not complaining about mobile technology. I'm really pleased with like the kind of access to information it provides, but there are some things about it that it will only ever like emulate computing, and it won't actually be able to perform until we have a real interface that we can use, and not some pinch gestury stuff or pressing on the keypad long enough to make it do special symbols. Because I've seen people who do some really incredible graphic design on a tablet, so I know that that's where it begins. Nobody thought that anyone was going to use computers to make music, but they made it. Now we use computers to make practically all of the music. And the same thing with digital art. It started somewhere. And then eventually the rest of the world's like, oh, we can use this stuff for normal things. So it's just kind of backwards. All the normal things came first, and the arts and music and design and heavy use will come later, I think. We just don't have that like wireless mouse and keyboard and screen action that I thought was going to happen.
Yeah, it's crazy how that has kind of lagged. And I wonder if it's because of development or because of the mouse just being good enough.
I think this stuff already exists, but they haven't finished extracting enough wealth out of it to move on to the next iteration of technology. I'm going to go with the Brave New World model, where they've got 4 or 5 next generations of technology waiting to unleash upon consumers, but they have to make sure they get enough blood out of these stones that they can make it profitable for the next captain of technology or leader of the technological revolution to emerge and show us all the new way, like Steve Jobs or Bill Gates is doing now, buying farmland and and pissing off world leaders. I don't know. I think he did his job. He did a good job. He took it really seriously, and he made it easier to find information last year. It sucks that he had to basically create Microsoft and do all that stuff, but Microsoft is doing all right? They're not a horrible company. They're not issuing out updates that brick people's computers or forcing updates that like in the middle of doing something, because some people don't like to schedule their updates.
Has Apple been doing that?
I think Apple's been doing that for a long time though.
Whoa.
But they're all doing it. Except I think Linux Foundation is the only one that's not actively forcing people to update. And so, like, you know, Ubuntu doesn't require you to update. They'll ask you if you want to, but every time I've installed Ubuntu, it's always been everything's manual. I just turn on terminal or open terminal and enter some commands, and then software packages update, and then I reboot, and then everything is the next iteration. That's a little too user involved, I think. I don't think that. I think the real problem with Linux for the longest time, of course, was that it required that you do your real administration through a terminal, and that's something that people generally have to learn how to do, and it's not intuitive at all. I mean, help is intuitive, but I'm not sure if everyone knows even to type help and hit enter.
Right. I mean, you know, if you grew up on DOS, you might be inclined to, but
I wonder what the cutoff is for DOS, though. Like, what's the end of the DOS generation?
Probably like 89, right?
Man. Yeah.
It was by 97, pretty much everything was GUI.
Yep. Well, I remember OS2 was still around in 1990, and that had a really rudimentary hybrid of like a DOS-like environment, but it had a mouse, too.
Yeah, because whenever Windows...
I mean, even the Windows cursor wasn't even fully realized until, like, Windows 3.1 sucked. I've only experienced it a few times, and it was like, it's like painful. It's like trying to use a calculator to write a term paper.
Yeah, because Windows 95, I feel like, is when everybody really started switching over.
Yeah, that's when they started taking it seriously.
Yeah. Windows
98 was really, really stable, and Windows 98 SE was kind of weird. And then they did 2000, and that was all
everything, right. Well, I was gonna say by 2000, everything was like GUI.
Yeah. And the only time you would need to use a terminal or a command line was for really, really specific, like permissions editing or. Nobody. I think I had to take a class to learn advanced command line. I had to take another class to learn how to use a Linux terminal. These were like, I mean, obviously these things are available, but you know, it's not part of mainstream computing. I think it's getting closer because I read more about adoption of like Nix-like properties in PowerShell, and I also read a lot about Linux subsystem for Windows, or Windows Linux subsystem. Anyways, there are a lot of integrations with between Linux and Windows now that allow for like Linux software to run natively. It's sandboxed, but it's running, and it's running at like real time, and so there's. I don't know. I think it's interesting because Windows seems to be absorbing a lot of technologies, similarly to the way that Apple did with its OS X. And what happened with OS X is that development, they don't talk about it anymore. It's just kind of, they do little minor revisions and updates here and there. But it's almost like the Linux universe is also in the same boat where it's really just fine-tuning. And it's finally fine-tuned enough that the Windows microcosm is like, we need this technology.
Well, it's like one of those transitions where now it feels like someone who knows how to do command line is a hacker or some shit.
I mean, there was a time when I never needed to take my hands off of a keyboard, but it was because my keyboard had a little, button in it that functioned as a mouse. I've met some serious keyboard ninjas, though, that did everything through command line, and they would just open, their applications from command line. Everything was so fast that you could barely keep up with them. And that stuff's impressive, but I don't think that's mainstream computing at all. I think that's like the opposite of mainstream computing. That's like super specialized. Somebody wants to be an ethical hacker, they need to be able to work like that. But web developers probably don't need to know how to use a command line.
Right.
Graphic designers probably don't care about command line. They might if they want to design something that looks like a command line, but I doubt that I doubt that's like one of their. Oh, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to work on my commands. I think you got to be in school for that kind of thing to work, for that kind of attention and discipline.
Yeah, it's a very specialized skill set anymore, which, you know, HTML, CSS, compilers. I mean, I guess code compilers, even for that matter. A lot of GUI-based code assistants have made it so, like, yeah, you can do some pretty complex stuff and never learn or never have to look at a line of like command line code, but still actually code it.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the object-oriented development.
Yeah. Yeah, object-oriented development has been automated to the point where, yeah, you don't have to look at a line of code in a lot of cases.
I think that's good for anything design, like visual communication or graphic design-wise. That makes a lot of sense.
Like 90% of the internet.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But software, where it does cool things in the background, I think that probably requires more discrete attention to configuration.
Yeah. That's also why, you know, I think a lot of lay people don't understand what it takes to create 3D models. They think you can just like type a few lines of code and make a 3D model. I mean, which in some cases, I guess you could make a geometric by typing in lines of code. But
I mean, a lot of 3D models require or demand like incredible amounts of math, and like even simple curved shapes require a lot of math to get gradients to look right. And then we're not even talking about textures. I guess if we started with if we started with like wireframe models, it might be easier to get started, but eventually textures and surfaces have to exist. Material, how it moves has to be programmed. That stuff's really complicated. I took a sculpture class years ago, and the instructor was he developed Unreal Tournament game boards, rooms. And I remember looking at this stuff then. This was like 15 years ago, almost, more than that. And it was cool then. It was like, you know, it was around the time of Halo, so, you know, gotta temper expectations. But it was really good for the time. And I remember like talking to him about it, and, you know, like you just described, there's so much that goes into just developing the way something looks, and he didn't have anything to do with the way that the environment sounded. That was like a different person. But that stuff is like still super complicated, and it's really easy to take for granted. I think over the years people have said to me things like, I really like video games, what do you think I need to do to get into game development? It's like, well, you need to go study computer science. Go study informatics. You might be able to get into game development from there. But I feel like that's a competitive universe. Because not only do you have to be good at coding, but like you have to deal with game designers who probably don't even code themselves.
Mm-hmm. It's like an eclectic group of people that need to come together to make a video game.
Yeah, the team. Like a friend of mine, she was one of the writers for a Halo game, and she was on a team of writers. I imagine that they had an entire building dedicated to Halo, where different sections of a floor would be like one part of a level.
Oh yeah.
Like, I wonder how much Halo 4 made.
It's like one of the biggest video game franchises ever at this point.
Well,
So.
Halo 4 itself grossed $220 million in launch day, and by the end of the week, it had grossed $300 million. Holy crap! That's like major motion picture numbers. How much did the whole series make? $5 billion?
Yeah, and I bet they've probably put in
That was in 2016.
billion maybe for development. Maybe a little. I would say maybe a little less.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow. I mean, this is like this is incredible. Like, I didn't realize that this game had made so much money. That's
Yeah, it's like one of the biggest franchises. It's like that, World of Warcraft, League of Legends.
dude. Pokemon's worth $90 billion.
Yeah.
Mario's
Some of
worth $30 billion. That's incredible. I mean, that's the entire franchise. Pokemon's been around for a long time. Mario's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
GTA.
I mean, I think Resident Evil might be one of the biggest between the games and the movies.
No, I think movies. Resident Evil is like the highest grossing video game franchise. So, in terms of movies,
Call of Duty.
yeah. This is the kind of stuff that's just billion-dollar industries. Holy crap. Need for Speed is worth $4 billion. Clash of Clans, that's a Fondle Slab game, $6 billion. Supercell, they make like 3 games for mobile devices.
Jeez.
It's incredible. Warcraft itself is worth $10 billion. Final Fantasy is worth $10 billion. Street Fighter's worth $11 billion. Holy
League
moly.
of Legends is 15 billion. Yeah, there's a lot. Let's see, like in NBA 2K.
Let's see. Where is that in there? FIFA has been around since '93. That's a $10 billion franchise. I don't know. This list is definitely, it's not very comprehensive. It only has 50 entries.
Well, the NBA 2K is worth like $1 billion. So yeah, that shows like the scale. Something that's even as big as NBA 2K is like $1 billion franchise compared to like League of Legends. It's like 15 billion.
These are video
Yeah, 'cause-
games. These aren't even like, there's barely anything tangible about these things other than like a DVD case and some
These are
insert.
derivative properties of like those thousand players we were talking about earlier.
Yep.
This is derivative of their life, of their lives. This game would not exist. This franchise would not exist if there wasn't an NBA. So it's like Yeah, we're in a weird derivative space.
And from 2019 to 2020, the NFL revenue dropped $4 billion from 16 to $12 billion. The NFL only makes $12 billion a year. But still, as you pointed out, these are derivative of that industry itself. These are like,
Well, but the League of Legends yearly championship garners more viewers than the Super Bowl now, so
that's true.
that tracks.
That's true.
Totally tracks. Which is crazy to think about how these virtual sports have like usurped physical sports in both viewership and revenue. That's a really crazy shift, really.
I think, man, I've watched some people play video games that are just like, they've got inhuman, like supernatural reflexes, and like they've got to be plugging that controller like directly into their brain somehow. Like they're not even using their hands. Some of that stuff's so incredible. Like when
some of the like fighters or people that play fighting games are like that. Where you're like, how do you even move that fast? Are your fingers really that fast? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah, when I watch people do the Street Fighter tournaments, I see some of the most incredible Street Fighter mastery that's like, I'm not sure that I've played enough video games cumulatively over the course of my entire life to have that kind of like mastery over one game. And you know, it's like watching an athlete. It's like watching a well-trained, resourced athlete do things that are beyond the average gamer. I could actually say that about practically anybody who's playing like NFL 2K20, whatever. Like I don't know how to play that game. So anyone who plays something like that's gonna be able to do things. But I play Street Fighter. I like Street Fighter. Get my ass kicked playing sometimes, but it's fun. It's still fun. But man, you see some of these guys, and they're on like a different level. I don't even know. Can't even approach that kind of stuff sometimes. It's like you see it, and they do some crazy shit right off the bat, and it's like, how? I guess that's the magic, right? That's why we like professionals, because they can do things that, like in their field, that normal people just can't do.
Is it the joystick, or is it performance enhancing?
Mountain Dew. They're on performance enhancing Mountain Dew and bags of Doritos. I mean, if that's the secret to enhanced video game supremacy. Yeah. Oh, that's so bad. That's just terrible.
Exceptional Radio.
Exceptional Randos Show is produced live in Sunroom Studios Base Capsule and in partnership with KLST 103.5, RadioCallisti.org. Remember to catch our Exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening.